And then one of the lords who did this stabbing, he's dressed in full armour, and she knows him already. He trundles in and he says, "Oh, could I have some wine?" I mean, what is he trying to say? This is thirsty work, killing your secretary in front of you. Hello, I'm Kate Williams, and today we're going to be talking about the Palace of Holyrood House. It's Saturday, the 9th of March, 1566, and Mary Queen of Scots is enjoying a pleasant dinner in her rooms in Holyrood House. It's her palace, that's where she's been staying really pretty much all the time since she came back from France at the age of 18 to resume her throne as Mary Queen of Scots. She's having a lovely evening. Her secretary is there, David Rizzio, some friends. And then in bursts her husband, Lord Darnley, along with some other Scottish lords, and they say they want to seize Rizzio. They want to grab him, and he hides behind her. They seize him anyway. She, at this point, is 6 months pregnant. She says someone waves a gun at her, and she's terrified they're going to kill her. They drag Rizzio off. They throw him down the stairs, and they stab him over and over again. They stab him around 57 times, and they say, the lords say to Lord Darnley, Mary Queen of Scots' husband, they say, "You've got to put in the knife, the last knife." Mary Queen of Scots is totally traumatised, and then one of the lords who did this stabbing, he's dressed in full armour, and she knows him already. He trundles in and he says, "Oh, could I have some wine?" I mean, what is he trying to say? This is thirsty work, killing your secretary in front of you. So David Rizzio is shockingly killed in this bloody murder in Edinburgh, but in a sense, he's a red herring, because what the lords want and what Darnley want is to take Mary prisoner. He's the excuse. They want to capture her, take her prisoner, and take her prisoner until she gives birth to her baby. Because if you're a queen, giving birth to a baby could be the end of you. We see Elizabeth I staying the Virgin Queen for various reasons, but one of them is because if you have a boy, or possibly even a girl, you could be unseated for them. When Mary Queen of Scots has her son, if it is a boy, she could lose all power for him. And the men who want to seize power from Mary Queen of Scots, what they're going to do is push her out and say they are regent with Lord Darnley, the father, to the little boy. This is the plan. They're going to push Mary out, but then Lord Darnley changes his mind, goes back to Mary, and matters are resumed. The only hint of poor old Rizzio is a blood stain just where he was dragged out. And that blood stain was still available to be viewed during the Victorian period. Some housemaids used to take guests down there and show it to them for a small fee. And do you know what I think? I think that actually people were colouring it in with food colouring by that point to make a little bit of money of the Rizzio blood stain. The Palace of Holyrood House is the official residence of the royal family in Scotland, and it has so many great moments of Scottish history there, particularly Mary Queen of Scots and Bonnie Prince Charlie. So Holyrood House dates really back to the very early medieval times, but it was James IV who built this great Gothic palace there, and we think it's because it was really because he was about to be married to Margaret, sister of Henry VIII. It was really going to be their home pleasure palace. James V extended Holyrood greatly and added the Royal Library, and he also added the rectangular tower that you can still see today, and that was where the royal apartments were that he lived with his first wife, Princess Madeleine, who died not long after arriving in France, and his second wife, Mary of Guise. Mary of Guise, James V's second wife and mother of Mary Queen of Scots, well, she was a widow. She was in France. She had everything. She was playing cards with her ladies-in-waiting while she was a widow. What else could you want? She was told, you better get back on that marriage market. And in the 16th century dating app, she's got two choices. Number one is Henry VIII. Number two is James V of Scotland. Now, Scotland was seen as having a few downsides. The climate was seen as very injurious to French people, like Princess Madeleine. It basically killed French people. And also, there were lots of conversations that Scottish people, it was very cold, and the only way to survive it was by drinking a lot. And James V had a lot of mistresses, so he is not really seeming like number one on your 16th century dating app. But the alternative is Henry VIII. and he's been chopping off heads by this point. And Mary of Guise is heard to say that she doesn't think she's got the right type of neck to marry Henry VIII. So instead, she marries James V. They have 2 sons who don't survive, and then they have Mary, Queen of Scots. Mary, Queen of Scots, becomes queen at 6 days old because her father is dying after a battle, and I'm afraid to say that I think that the news that his child is a daughter, not a son, pushes him over the edge, and she's queen at 6 days old. She's born at the Lithgow, one of my other favourite palaces of Scotland. It's so beautiful. It's like this great ruined palace, but it was this wonderful pleasure palace at the time. And then, really, when she's very small, she's sent off to France to marry the Dauphin of France, along with her ladies-in-waiting, who are all called Mary. She's sent off to France, but when the Dauphin becomes king and then dies, she comes back to Scotland, and she actually resumes her throne at this point as an active monarch in 1561. But everyone, really, in Scotland, while Mary was away, has been pretty much used to do what they want. And when she comes back, they're trying to seize power from her. And we start to see these power grabs that intensify when she's pregnant. So in 1566, poor old Rizzio gets killed. She's nearly imprisoned, but then she's not. Then later on that year, she gives birth to her son, James, future James VI, and he is born at Edinburgh Castle. What a stronghold, the great Edinburgh Castle. After baby James is born, everyone is trying to push Mary out and get power. And in 1567, Lord Darnley's house in Edinburgh is blown up, and Darnley is found just near with his valet, smothered in the orchard. And at this point, Mary is in Holyrood. She's been visiting Darnley. He's been ill, so she's been visiting him and going back to her palace at Holyrood. And she's in Holyrood when they hear this giant explosion which rocks all Edinburgh because Darnley's house has been blown up and he is found dead just nearby with his servant. The plan that is now in the National Archives is an incredible document. It's a plan of Darnley's murder, and this was drawn by the English spies who were very quick on the scene, suspiciously. And you've got Darnley, his servant, and beside them, well, it's a bit Cluedo, really, because beside them, you've got a chair, a rope, a dagger, and 2 dressing gowns. What was that for? Well, what I think happened was that they heard, Darnley and his servant heard that the baddies were coming to blow up his house. So they got out of the window using the chair and the rope, and they were wearing the dressing gowns because they'd been in bed and they were just trying to clothe themselves, and they had the dagger for protection. Well, they were totally overpowered in the orchard, and this made it a totally botched murder, and suspicion falls on Mary, Queen of Scots. In Holyrood, she's in shock. She's walking around, people say, as if she's totally unconscious, like she's sleepwalking. She can't get over the shock because she's lost her husband, and she also thinks that they're coming for her next. This moment when Darnley is killed is really the beginning of the end for Mary, Queen of Scots. Everything that can go wrong for her goes wrong at this point. She is forced to marry Lord Bothwell, who was one of the men who were involved in the conspiracy against Lord Darnley. Lord Bothwell made a deal with the other lords, all the other Scottish lords, and he said to them, "I'll share power with you if you allow me to marry Mary." And they all said, "Yeah, that's great. We'll all share power with you. Good plan." But the thing is that Mary didn't want to marry him, so he forces her. He takes her to his castle, he seizes her, he forces her, he sexually assaults her, and the reason why he does that is so he can take her in marriage. And she has no choice but to agree. She thinks she's pregnant, well, she is pregnant, and therefore they're set on this terrible path. She marries him. It's all a disaster. Very soon, Mary, Queen of Scots and Bothwell go to war against Mary, Queen of Scots' half-brother. Her half-brother, James V's son by a mistress, go to war against him, another person called James, and he wins, and that's the end of Mary, Queen of Scots. They bring her back to Edinburgh. They try and put her in Edinburgh Castle, but there's so much love for her and so much protest that they have to take her away to a castle which they see is totally in the middle of nowhere. That's Lochleven Castle in the middle of a lake, and there poor Mary loses the pregnancy that she had, and then she's forced to abdicate at knife point, and she's imprisoned in Lochleven Castle. But she somehow managed to escape while they're having a wild party, dressed as a washerwoman. She gets away, and this is Mary's moment. She arrives to a stronghold, one of her castles. She's free. She could go to France, where she has estates. she could stay in Scotland, try and get her throne back. The baby, her son, is the king, but he's a baby. And it's her half-brother, James, who's in charge, and he's not popular. Regent James is not at all popular. So she could try and get her throne back. I think it's possible, maybe not for very long, but she could. Or she could go to France. She decides to go over the border to England because she hopes that Elizabeth I, accepting the importance of queenship, will put her back on her throne. Now, Elizabeth I does want to, but Elizabeth I's advisors say absolutely not. Mary, Queen of Scots, is public enemy number one. They don't want her back on her throne, and therefore Mary, Queen of Scots, spends the next 20 years essentially in house arrest, in prison, and that is her life. She is begging Elizabeth to meet her. It's just made as seen as not possible. First, she's put on trial for the death of her husband. They can't really find any evidence, so they can't really make a conclusion either way. And then finally, she agrees to a plot to depose Elizabeth, put her on the throne with an uprising. And when she agrees to that plot, she's caught. She writes these coded letters from where she's imprisoned, and little does she know that in the actual castle there's a decoder, and he gets his hand on the letters, he gets them, he decodes them, and he sees that when she finally agrees with the plot, he says, that's it, we've got her. They put Mary Queen of Scots on trial for treason, and then she's found guilty. And Elizabeth I is told, you need to sign the execution warrant. And Elizabeth I doesn't want to do it. She doesn't want to do this to a woman who is her relation. And she also, I think, she recognises that if you do put a queen on trial and if you do execute them, you're undermining the very idea of queenship if you can be executed. So she doesn't want to do it. And she feels there might be a Spanish invasion, that Philip of Spain might come in anger. So she says no. But in the end, she agrees. And I think what she thinks is that this execution warrant can be sort of, left in the back of the filing cabinet, not really looked at. Think about Elizabeth has left people on death row for quite a long time before. I think that's what she wants to do again. She hopes she can shilly-shally, and then eventually Mary will just stay there until she dies, and Elizabeth won't have to be seen to be executing her. As soon as the men around Elizabeth, including William Cecil, when they've got this execution warrant, they get it and they immediately enact it. They put it in place as quickly as they can. And Mary Queen of Scots is swiftly executed at Fotheringhay Castle, and Elizabeth doesn't know it's happening. So if she knew, she would have made sure it was a proper event, accepting that Mary is the queen. But instead, they don't treat Mary as a queen. They barely treat her with the chivalry of a woman. One of the men there who's watching actually protests when the executioner is supposed to be taking Mary's dress off. He says, that's just not, we can't have that. So the ladies in waiting do this. Mary is alone on the scaffold and she's executed. And there's such a fear of the authorities of finding out that Mary's heart is taken and it's put in a jar and it's buried deep under the mound at Fotheringhay so no one can find it. All her belongings are burnt. The servants are locked up so they can't talk. And the ports are closed. The ports are closed for around 6 weeks so the information doesn't get out, so that Philip of Spain doesn't find out and launch an invasion. Elizabeth is told, she's devastated, she's furious with Cecil. She has to beg forgiveness of James for executing his mother. Mary Queen of Scots didn't spend that long at Holyrood, not even 10 years, but she loved it. And when she came over from France, when she came to resume her throne, she brought with her boats of rugs and drapes and books and furniture, all this beautiful French furniture, all these fabulous items. Under Mary Queen of Scots, Holyrood really reached its pinnacle of design and elegance. Now, James IV and James V had built well, but I don't really think they'd furnished it that well. They'd made beautiful external buildings, but interior design wasn't really their thing. I mean, James built, a great kitchen, a great library, but I'm not so sure he thought about what was going to be on the walls. When Mary came, she filled it really full of all these beautiful items, and she brought stuff with her, and she also bought a lot. She bought a lot from shops in France, and she bought some from shops in London. And I really can't imagine Mary Queen of Scots arriving back into Holyrood House as a young queen thinking, I know, I'm really going to get things started here and go into the 16th century catalogues and get all these interiors and beautiful furnishings. She lost it. It was taken from her. Her half-brother lived in Holyrood as a regent and sold off a lot of her belongings, including her famous black pearls. There was a fight between Catherine de Medici and Elizabeth I over who got the black pearls, and Elizabeth won. So he sold off a lot of the great furnishings, a lot of the great materials, and then he got shot at Lithgow. So that was the end of him. And then James, Mary's son, he spent the rest of his early life at Holyrood, and it was at Holyrood in 1603 that James was told Elizabeth I had died, and he was now King of England and Scotland. James VI became James I. James had been obsessed with the fact that there were very bad storms when his wife, Anne of Denmark, came over to marry him, and that was all the fault of witches. So he decided it was all these witches' fault. So Agnes Sampson, who was really a small-time local healer, she was brought to Holyrood House, and James interrogated her there as a witch. Agnes was resistant to James's interrogation, so they took her off, they tortured her, used a rope to press on her head, and they found the witch's mark. And that witch's mark was meant to be where the devil had got into her body. So the witch's mark was found, she was deemed a witch, and that was the end of her. She was burned. In the 17th century, Holyrood House goes rather quiet because James VI, James I, is spending most of his time in England. In the 18th century, it surges back to life, and that's because Bonnie Prince Charlie has come to stage the Jacobite Rising and get his throne back. Now, Bonnie Prince Charlie, we're going to hear about him in a future episode. That is because in the episode about St James's Palace, there's a story, the warming pan baby, James II's son, is decreed not to be legitimate. He was smuggled in a 17th century hot water bottle, and therefore that little boy James is pushed away, doesn't get the throne. His son is Charles Bonnie Prince Charlie. In 1745, he comes back to Scotland and he's going to get his throne back. He sets up court at Holyrood, and Holyrood becomes this wonderful court of this fabulous Bonnie Prince Charlie. He's so glamorous, he's so charismatic. Everyone is there fighting for him. He's going to be the next king. It is really, really exciting. And there's all a desire to get down into England, to capture England, to beat back the English and push those boring old Georgians off the throne. Well, it doesn't succeed. The Jacobites lose the Battle of Culloden, and that is the end of the Jacobite hopes, of Bonnie Prince Charlie's hopes. It is all gone. But I love that fact that in 1745 we saw some of the glamour and grandeur of Holyrood all over again. Holyrood becomes something of a royal guest house. After the French Revolution, George III allows the Comte d'Artois, the younger brother of Louis who was executed, along with his wife, Marie Antoinette, he allows the Comte d'Artois to come and hang out at Holyrood to hide, just in case he's going to be executed. I don't think that's the case. He's not going to be executed. Actually, the Comte has got some very large debts that he just doesn't want to repay. In the way that they did before the French Revolution. They just thought, I'll just buy this, I'll just charge this, and I won't pay. And then George IV later comes to Scotland, becomes the first Georgian monarch to come to Scotland, and he doesn't stay at Holyrood, but he has a big reception there. And what we see after George IV, a lot of it thanks to this big reception at Holyrood, is the romance of Scotland, the tartan, the bagpipes, these misty, misty glen. This, Sir Walter Scott, Waverley, it becomes a big romance in England. The English become obsessed by the romance of Scotland. So I think we can see an actual comparison, an actual line between that reception at Holyrood and George IV and all that romance of Scotland, and then Queen Victoria deciding that just the place she wanted to live with her young family was Balmoral. And that's what she wanted, to buy herself her own Scottish Disney castle. Holyrood is the official residence of the monarchy, and it's been variously renovated. George V actually put in electric lights and a lift. That was rather exciting at the time. And it is the official residence of the monarchy, and it's also open to the public. You can go, you can see the rooms, you can see the beautiful places, and you really can imagine yourself back with Mary Queen of Scots and Bonnie Prince Charlie. But I've got to tell you that bloodstain, the Rizzio bloodstain, the one that you could see in the 19th century if you're a tourist paying the right amount of money to the housemaid, I'm afraid to say the Rizzio bloodstain has now gone. Holyrood has no Rizzio bloodstain, but it's got all the history.